National Youth Service Corps scheme has faced ongoing debate about the relevance and effectiveness. Recently, the Nigerian government proposed extending the scheme from 1 year to 2 years, aiming to enhance skill acquisition and foster entrepreneurship among youths. While some stakeholders believe this extension could contribute more significantly to national development, others argue that the existing challenges, such as inadequate facilities, security concerns, and financial constraints, need to be addressed first. Calls to potentially scrap the scheme have also surfaced, given these issues. To discuss the future of the NYSC program and its proposed extension, the current challenges facing the scheme, and possible reforms to make it more impactful for the Nigerian youth. We're now joined by Hilliard Eta, the former acting chairman of the APC and chairman-designate of the NYSC board. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, amidst the calls for the scrapping of NYSC, especially looking at many of the challenges, employability of the participants, security concerns, accommodation, poor facilities, now we get this call from the Minister of Education and, by extension, the federal government to extend the scheme to 2 years. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you for having me once again. The NYSC was established in 1973, primarily to engender unity and foster cohesion in the country using our young people, as at then, coming out from a very brutal civil war. At this time, in 1973, the Nigerian state had about 6 universities and perhaps less than 100,000 graduates at the time. And so it was properly managed. The number was manageable at the time. And it had gone on to where Nigeria now has about 276 universities and more than almost close to 1 million graduates every year. And given this, the logistical situation, the security, the insecurity in the country, the employability of these graduates, and perhaps the lack of skill of most of the graduates that have come out has posed a problem, and this has caused a lot of people to ask for the scrapping of the scheme. Put it side by side with other countries that have had this kind of schemes, countries like Israel, countries like South Korea, where they have used this scheme to strengthen the defense of their country, to help in the productivity, especially in sectors like agriculture and infrastructure, the provision of infrastructure. It has become a conversation that we must have. For me, my take is that the NYSC is still a very relevant scheme if it is tailored towards the national development and the key sectors and the relevant sectors as we have it today. For the Minister of Education is not the first person who has called for the extension of the scheme. All of these interventions needs for all the stakeholders to sit down and see to whether the scheme needs extension, because given, for instance, the vocational training aspect of the scheme, which has not been expanded to accommodate a lot of the participants in the scheme. If this is expanded and made to be relevant to the Nigerian economy, and if we now look at the core as providing the personnel for the training of perhaps military personnel in the country to help in the security of the country, all of these can be situated in perhaps a conversation where we can now decide whether it is possible to increase the time that is allocated for this scheme. For now, it is a suggestion that has been made. Other suggestions have also been made. I think that we will find a proper channel, a proper environment to sit down and decide whether these suggestions are some of the things that we can put on the table with regards to the scheme.
All right, Mr. Eta, we certainly hear you on that. Now, looking at what it even takes to become a Nigerian graduate, where some students spend a lot more than 4 years in school, sometimes 2 times the amount, and or you pair that with the high youth unemployment rate that our country is experiencing, is the extension of an NYSC proposal not one that is simply delaying graduates' entry into the workforce? It might sound to an extent that it might be creating more of a problem than it's solving.
Thank you very much Thank you for bringing that out. It is unfortunate that most times that the number of years that one should spend in a tertiary institution is extended by circumstances beyond the control of the student. I think that there are certain situations, there are certain policies that the government has brought out that will help in taking care of those kinds of things. One of which is the Students' Loan Fund, which will help the students to finish on time if he can apply or deploy the loan to his studies. The other thing is to also the relationship between government and the unions in the Nigerian university system or the Nigerian tertiary institution system that will allow for people to go through their courses in agreed time frame. Having said so, I want to think that one of the things that we have observed is the unemployability of most of the graduates that have come out of the universities. And if the NYSC is going to help in giving them the kinds of skill that they need to navigate life, then we need to even think about expanding the vocational training environment in the scheme and making them, especially now that the world is going AI and ICT, we need a lot of time for us to push our people into those areas and see how we can compete with others in the world.
Mr. Eta.
And also taking into consideration that they...
Mr. Eta, yes. I'm sorry to, but based on what you said, about the unemployability of the graduates, would it make more sense to collaborate with the university so that as the students are going through their education, then they also have that vocational aspect that you're talking about while they're in school, so that they can be employable, as opposed to going through school maybe for 6 years, then being delayed at the workforce because of the potential extension. So what about, would you think it's worthwhile considering collaboration while they're in school as opposed to after the fact?
No, that is exactly what I have said. We're having this conversation now. So what you have suggested is not off the table. Every viable suggestion will be part of the conversation that we're going to have. And we must have that conversation now because it is the National Youth Service Scheme is quite relevant to our nation. And if we must have that conversation, we're going to have it now. The suggestion about having the vocational training within the time frame where you are in the university or the polytechnic or the college of education, wherever you are, is also, it makes sense. It makes sense in truth because Nigeria needs more people with skills than ever before. Remember that as of 1973, when this scheme started, where we had less than 100,000 graduates from only the 6 universities we had at the time, they were assured of government employment the public service was in actual desire for these people to graduate on time and come into the public service to help Nigeria grow at the time. But as you know today, the public service is saturated, and then we need people to be employed in the private sector. They have to be employable. Now, if they cannot be employed in the private sector, they have to have the skill to go into entrepreneurship. These are some of the things that we are considering. But as I said earlier on, there are stakeholders around this conversation. One person cannot be the only or come out with the solution to all of these situations that we have. I think that the best thing to do at this point is to have that conversation. The moment we have that conversation, we're going to come out.
And apparently employability is at the core of this conversation. And thankfully, one of the things being touted is the expansion of the skill acquisition and development program, which of course the NYSC participants take part in. But I'd like to know what or how you think the NYSC can leverage technology to improve the experience and also skill acquisition of these participants, because we've gone beyond the world is going digital. How do you think the NYSC can leverage on technology to improve the skill acquisition part of the NYSC?
Well, thank you very much. When I was briefed about the informally though, because I'm yet to be inaugurated as the chairman of the governing board of the NYSC. But when I was informally briefed, I was surprised that as of today, none of the camps of the NYSC is a smart camp. Now you're going to put about between 1,000 to 2,000 youths in a place. That place for Nigeria to move forward, that place, for instance, has to be smart. There has to be some kind of ICT hub. And I see a situation where we will play with green energy, where we can go take the 37 camps of the NYSC in Nigeria off the grid and make it autonomous in terms of alternative and green energy. All of these things are going to help us in the president's reforms, which puts the youth at the epicenter of almost all the policies of government in such a way that the youth will be imbued and sufficiently skilled in the areas of ICT, AI, and the sorts, not also forgetting things like agriculture, things like leather works, and all of the other things that will upscale their skills and make for entrepreneurship ultimately. Before I go, let me say here that there is what the president has established in Nigeria that is called the Nigerian Youth Fund. Now, my attitude is that perhaps this is the most critical demography within the youth population. And if their skills are upscaled, there is nothing wrong with the NYSC also creating an access for them to seamlessly attract this youth fund that has been created by the president. This, for me, I think that if you cannot gain entry or gain employment into the federal government or the public service, or you cannot gain employment into the private sector, you should be able, using the skills that you have acquired, you should be able to set up a startup of your own using the Nigerian Youth Fund. This is all of the things that we are playing around to see that the Nigerian youth is effectively mobilized for the new era.
All right, would like to hear more about that, of course, as it unfolds. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Hilliard Eta, Chairman-designate of the NYSC board. Good to have you on the show, and thank you for your time.